Hey there, take a look at these politicians. What is the thing that comes to your mind when you first see them? Probably boring and downright unbearable. Now what about these? Probably dangerous, radical, or probably the best thing that ever happened. It really depends on your political spectrum. However, I want to show you a different picture. This is Teddy Roosevelt at the Battle of San Juan, which was a part of the larger Spanish-American War. Or here, General Dwight D. Eisenhower addressing the American paratroopers prior to D-Day. What does this make you feel? Probably a sense of good old patriotism and that they actually cared about the people of this country. Heck, I'm not American, but I can't help but feel a weird sense of pride and patriotism for a land I've never been to. The probable question now is, why does there seem to be such a huge difference between these two generations of politicians? Certainly their countries have changed in massive ways, and I would argue the ways of doing politics has changed even further. I don't want to romanticize these people because certainly not all politicians from the time were morally perfect individuals. There was no such time like that. But there's this myth around people like Roosevelt, Churchill, and de Gaulle, and many other politicians at the time, which many would argue modern politicians lack. Now you can use words like nostalgia or viewing history through a colorful lens, but you really cannot deny the personalities that we see today in modern politics have drastically changed. The most simple and boring answer is politics has turned from a means to steer a country into a direction through a certain ideology to just being treated as another profession. I would argue professionalization of politics really began around the 70s and 60s during the massive neoliberal trend of Reagan and Thatcher, where the main goal of politics shifted from taking care of your citizens through welfare programs to just making the GDP line go up. The line goes up, the profit goes up, all good, all well. What this meant for politicians was that they mostly took on a different way of looking at their work. It was now managerial and almost corporate in nature. Climb the political ladder, keep the country's profits going, and most importantly, be safe. Don't say anything controversial and keep things vague. The generation of politicians produced by these type of thinkings cannot be overstated in the Western world. Having a personality in politics became quite a dangerous thing to have when you're running for office. Populism was a dirty word back then, not anymore. Now that's a fair analysis, but I want to go deeper than this. I want to ask the question, why do we want leaders or politicians with a personality? Or why do you want to vote for someone who is charismatic, outgoing, and witty?
To do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
The answer is simple. You just like a leader who doesn't feel like a robot or behave like a reptilian lizard. Just as an example, I want to talk about this guy for a second. His second term is not going well, not that good. But I want to remind you just how big of a deal and popular Trump was in 2016. He was healthier, wittier, and just outrightly brutal.
What was that? Is that a dog? Uh-oh, it's Hillary.
Let me make this clear. I don't like Trump, but it would be stupid to deny a lot of people voted for him back in 2016 because of his personality. He was so much more different and radical from the established political class at the time, especially if you compare him to Hillary, who is literally, in my opinion, the perfect stereotype of the modern out-of-date politician. Bland, unlikable, and just a feeling that something is off about them, unlike her husband Bill Clinton, who is known to be very charming. Trump was bold and did not really have a filter on anything. This was unheard of in American politics or Western democratic politics. Well, maybe for the whole fascist thing back in the 1940s, but that's a different thing. Trump rode on this wave called populism and basically shaped American politics today, and it will last a long time even after he's well gone. It would be stupid to think that American politics was a utopian place before Trump. However, he came and kind of broke how politics was done, and was a rebellion against the image of a normal politician, which had been the American corporate political class, as I mentioned before. But this video is not about Trump, it's about change, goddammit. How did we get here? The thing is, there is not a single simple answer. Just kidding, it's social media. No, seriously, we cannot grasp how social media has changed politics is done, and how politicians get their message across their voters to win those special seats. Ever since Barack Obama started using his Twitter to carry out his message and becoming the first president to use social media, things have changed radically. But what about before all these? What about presidents before social media? The answer is traditional media. There always has been a form of media. Newspapers have been a thing since American politics really began, to be fair, then the radio for a good while, and then the television, which basically changed everything. If you want to go back, you can talk about the Gutenberg press, which allowed the mass production of printing material, which quite literally changed all of Europe's history. But I'm getting out of subject here. In short, the way people got their news and opinions about politicians was through traditional media like newspapers. These newspapers were managed by editors and only the most necessary information was sent out to the readers. You also had to take into the account that the time we are talking about of Roosevelt, Churchill and de Gaulle was a time of war and massive political and geopolitical change. So the press acted as a means to unify the people behind their leaders and create a sense of patriotism. You obviously had oppositions to these leaders, but regardless, the nation was united against a powerful common enemy. A great example is the ratings of George Bush skyrocketing after the 9/11 attacks. A unified country through a unified press. Scandals are nothing new in politics. You had Thomas Jefferson fathering children with Sally Heming, who was a slave, and John F. Kennedy with his extramarital affairs and connection to organized crime. And recently with Donald Trump and his refusal to show the Epstein files, which has done quite a lot of damage to his supporters. So how did the press back then act on politicians being involved in scandals? Let's take JFK. The press knew about his extramarital affairs and infidelity but refused to report on it. But why? Because of the culture of American journalism at the time. Let me explain. They did not view the president simply as a public official but as a representation of the entire country, a revered figure. They respected him. This sounds absurd to us, but this was really the case back then. The idea of humiliating the sitting president and humiliating the entire White House was unthinkable and shameful to journalists of the time. Post-war journalism was rarely concerned about personal private matters and instead put emphasis on policy and governance. What was the president doing in his bedroom was not really on top of their agenda. This was not just an isolated case in America but all throughout Europe. You had the English press not talk about Churchill's alcoholism, and let me tell you, his alcoholism was pretty bad. In France, you had the French journalists not mention de Gaulle's daughter, Anne, who was disabled, and de Gaulle was a man known to keep his personal life private, and the press respected it. The truth is, journalism has changed. You see more emphasis on investigative journalism, which has done a lot of good but has brought a lot of nasty stuff to the surface, like the Watergate crisis, which I would argue started this whole anti-political movement and cynicism about politicians that we see today. We have essentially democratized who can speak and tell the news. If you use Twitter and share your political opinion, even though you have like 22 followers, you are doing a form of journalism. Traditional media no longer exists or is not as powerful as it once used to be. Here's a thought experiment. If Twitter existed during Roosevelt, Churchill, and de Gaulle, do you really see anything changing compared to today? It's a wild experiment, but I really don't think so. Someone would probably ratio Roosevelt by calling him a cripple and telling him to step down, or someone would call Churchill an alcoholic. The matter of the fact is, we know more about politicians in this day and age, which has led politicians to take a safer and a more predictable way of interacting with the public, and creating very gated communities around them, away from the people they are supposed to work for. However, don't you worry, because politicians with big personalities are back. Not these people, but populists and leaders who drive on emotional rhetoric. The fact of the matter is that we are not getting another Churchill or Roosevelt because we simply don't do politics like that anymore. Is it for the better? I really don't know. Before I end this video, I want to show you this picture of Roosevelt. He had been suffering from polio. In most pictures you look around, you will find no trace of this. This was a deliberate choice by the journalists to respect and maintain the president's dignity and strength for a nation that was going through a very hard time. How do you think present-day journalists and media would approach this? Probably very differently. Thank you for watching this video. I would really appreciate if you would like and subscribe to support the channel. I'll see you next time and take care.